You're listening to Boobies and Newbies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. Happy holidays, everybody, and welcome to a special holiday edition of Boobies and Newbies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today's romance review marks the 6th episode in Boobies and Newbies' annual holiday special, The 12 Days of Boobsmas. That's right, we are officially halfway through the Boobsmas season, and so far, it's been one heck of a treat, if I do say so myself. Boobies and Newbies is bringing you 12 holiday-themed romances, 12 mini-pods, and 12 giveaways all month long. And the best way to keep up with what's coming up next is to follow us across the socials at Boobies Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You'll also find me over on the TikTok. That is also where you will find out about all of our upcoming giveaway opportunities this month, and we still have a few to go, so best of luck to everybody. On another note, if you want to make this podcaster's holiday wish come true, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or supporting the podcast on Patreon. And just in case you've missed any of our previous reviews, you can find them along with so much more on our one-stop shop of a website, boobiesandnewbies.com. But now, it's time for today's reading, which might be the zaniest farcical romance I've ever read. Joining me today for the 6th day of Boobsmas Delights is former podcast guest and hilarious entertainer, Kristen Clement. Chrissy, my dear, welcome back to Boobies and Newbies.
Hello, my darling. I'm so happy to be back. I'm just jazzed.
Just chuffed, if you will.
With Christmas delight.
So much delight and joy. I've been watching a lot of Great British Baking Show, so I feel like everything I want to say comes out as British, whether I intend it to
or classic
not.
Standard American. That's just fine. Pumpkin spice does that to you.
Yes, and everything nice. But
everything nice.
You've been on the podcast a couple of times. We were talking about this before we started recording, trying to remember the books that Chrissy and I have had the pleasure of reading together. The first of which was for our live show back in, if you can believe it, February 2019.
Oh my
which
gosh, is that far back?
I know, which I mean feels like 8,000 years ago at this point. But that was a unique experience because that was a choose-your-own-adventure styled romance, which was a great way, I think, to start. Like, a great
that
way
was
to
my
jump
first
in.
experience. That was my first romance novel experience, I believe, was the Choose Your Own Adventure. I think it was, what was the title? It was like...
It's either My Lady's Choosing or Our Lady's Choosing.
Yes, I think it was My Lady's Choosing. And what a ride. My goodness. That was good times.
It's like reading 20 romance novels in one.
Yes, it was a choose your own adventure. It brought me back to like the boxcar children's days, but more
so
exciting
good.
and obviously erotic, but it was, and really wacky, and scenarios where I'm like, this couldn't happen, but I'll take it.
But why not? And then your second time on the podcast was actually for a previous 12 Days of Boobsmas episode, which Chrissy and I had to really do our research to figure out what book it was that we read, which just goes to show you how memorable that particular reading was. But that book, I've already again forgotten the name of it, was A Bad Boy for Christmas.
So naughty. Yes, I was like, Christmas and a bad boy? Bad Boy for Christmas, that's right.
Yeah, done and done. But yeah, to this day, really couldn't tell you what that book was about, which again just makes it all the more memorable, right? I'm like, ooh, that must have been a really good one for me to remember so much about it, including the title.
Yes. Well, also sometimes when I'm consuming a lot of different things at once, in the moment, I'll be into it. And I'll be like, yes,
Mhm.
I'm on board. But the second I'm on to the next thing, like my slate just gets wiped clean regardless. Now, that could be
Or they
short-term
like
memory problems,
meld
but
together. Like
yes.
I've had that problem too, where it's like I'll be, obviously with the 12 Days of Boobs Miss, I'm recording these episodes like back to back to back. And so there are times where I will read the book that we're talking about like the morning of or like the night before, just so I can keep it fresh in my mind. Because otherwise, if I read it like a month in advance, I'm going to start
gonna lose
taking
it.
pieces
Yeah.
of that book and combining it with other books. And then I know that I'm going to get on a podcast and be like, oh yeah, do you remember when he made her breakfast in bed and there were smiley face pancakes? And they're going to be like, what are you talking about, Kelly? This was a Regency romance. There were no pancakes.
I was like, all right. No, I definitely finished the last 50 pages last night.
Perfect. And I finished it this morning.
Oh,
so we are on the same page. And I'm excited too, because I will say the one we read today, which we will go into in a few minutes, is a very quick read in general. So
I appreciated that. I was like, oh, that's not too bad. It's like 200
yes,
something.
exactly. So a bathtub read, I like to call it, or maybe a short plane ride home for the holidays kind of read. So it's good. It's good to mix those up within these like lengthier novels that you might be reading if you need a little break, a little breath in between.
Yes, it was a nice little giggly breath of fresh air with the little holiday spice peppered in. It was nice. It was good times.
Yeah, not enough spice in my opinion.
We'll get to that. I was a little angry about the lack of spice, but yes, we'll get to that.
It's true. You never know with holiday romances, and that's something I'd like to see change. But just in general, that a lot of them tend to be on the tamer side, which is fine. I mean, I actually, while reading this one, wasn't really that concerned about it. I kept thinking like, oh, you know what? This is probably going to be a closed door romance, which is okay. But at the same time, there's no reason why Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa of the like can't be spicy too.
Just a little bit. I mean, come on.
There's so many candles and like cinnamon and nutmeg. Like
everything smells good. We have cozy
Yes.
clothes. There's so many layers to take
warm.
off. Like
exactly.
come on now.
We're setting ourselves up for steamy times. And then when the steamy times don't deliver, I find myself questioning why.
Yes. Yes.
Another argument for another day. But first things first, let's talk holidays. So how are you celebrating this holiday season?
I am going up north to the Bay. I'm a Bay Area baby, as are you.
Yeah,
of course,
babe.
we grew up together, for goodness sakes. But I'm going up there to spend time. We usually go over to my Auntie Gigi's and we all sit on the couch, open presents. And oddly enough, it's become a tradition. We always end up watching Legends of the Fall. And I'm not complaining. But it just always happens to be on after like we open presents and we're having some hot chocolate and we're just chilling and talking and we just flip on the TV. We're like, oh, Legends of the Fall is on. And we always just end up sitting through the entire sad, beautiful movie.
So you're not even like going out of your way to like put in the DVD
No.
of Legends of the Fall. It just happens
always
to
on.
always be on at Christmas time.
Christmas time. I was like, what a sullen and downtrodden, but beautiful. I mean, I'll watch Brad any day, all day long with a fabulous score and Sir Hopkins. But at the same time, I'm like, this isn't a Christmas movie, but we always watch this at Christmas.
Like, who decided? Who was like the TV programmer that was like, you know what? We got this space to fill on Christmas afternoon. We're just going to throw in Legends of the Fall. Maybe they just got so many letters and emails from people after that were like, yes, excellent choice.
Yes.
That they just stuck with it.
Yes, I need Montana and snow and a little bit of sadness, but hey, it's about family. And it's like, tough sell, but I'll take it.
But I'll take it. Hey, there's snow. There's snow.
It kind of works. I mean, a little bit of war and death and sadness and depression, a little bit of suicide. But hey, the score is great.
But
and it's
hey,
warm
there's
and cozy.
Family and snow.
It's just bizarre, but yeah. And then last year, we kind of just succumbed to it. We all sat down and we're like, well, gosh, should we just watch Legends of the Fall? So I don't know why, but that's like become our thing. Over the years, like we decide on a big blockbuster, like what have we not seen? And then we'll do that at the holidays because we're all together. But yeah, the last like 4 or 5 years, Legends of the Fall just coming in hot. I don't know why. It's become a Christmas tradition. So
I like that though. I like that, even as adults, you can like well, and especially as adults, it's like you can kind of rediscover and like recreate new traditions that like maybe you haven't been doing since you were a kid. And that's okay because like also when you're like over the age of 30, maybe you don't want to be doing the same things that you were doing when you were 5.
Because our parents are like, instill these routines. It's cute. It's comfortable. Yes, yes. But then once you get a certain age, you're like, wait, I'm a grown up too. I get to have a glass of wine with my auntie. This is fun.
Yeah. Pass that wine, Aunt Gigi.
You guys put a little bit of whiskey in your hot chocolate. Oh, okay. Now in my 30s, I was too busy playing with my American Girl dolls when I was a child. I didn't think like, oh, they're all getting lit. And I didn't even know. So now it's like we get to be a part of it. So it's a new layer of tradition. That's just makes Christmas awesome.
Yeah, that's what I kind of like too, is like I feel like I'm the one in my family who's the one that tries to come up with like new traditions for us to have, because like my parents are just so chill,
fine with
like,
routine,
whatever. Yeah, like they're very accustomed to like, this is the way we lead our life. Do we need to make changes? And I'm like, well, that's fine, but also we could add a little something. So like for the last couple years, I'm a big fan of like subscription boxes and like something of the kind as like a gift. Like maybe you don't buy a subscription for an entire year for someone because that costs like a pretty penny, but maybe you do like a 3-month trial or something to like get them interested. And then if they want to continue, great. If not, whatever.
That's a really good idea. I never thought about that as a gift.
Yeah, I'm all about the experience now. Is like, well, how can we make this like an experience kind of thing? And so the last, I think it's been like 2 or 3 years at this point, I've started I started getting this box just for the month of December. It's just like their holiday special box, and it's snacks from around the world. And they give you like a little pamphlet to like tell you about the different snacks. And then they give you sort of like almost like a scorecard to like kind of like rank like how you like each and every snack. And so that's kind of become like a new tradition for like mom and dad and I, is like, okay, let's try this box of weird snacks, and like we're all for a competition. It's that Aries spirit within me where it's like, if we can make anything a game, we're going to do it.
That's
so
fun.
We've made we also love food. So to put food and games and competitions together.
And how well you know each other. Like, what do you think that mom rated this bag of cheese puffs? Oh, that's fun.
Become a new favorite tradition of mine as an adult.
Oh, that's good times. I love that. And of course, we do like the traditional, like, because now my sister, she has a little boy. So we also, of course, do Christmas morning with Santa. And waiting for my mom and dad would always like say we weren't allowed to go downstairs and open presents. We had to watch the Disney parade first. But as an adult, I realized that was their method of being like, look, we're not going straight down there at 5 a.m. You got to sit through this parade so I can get a couple minutes more sleep. And then we'll all go down and open presents. And so, yeah, me and Danny, with my sister, would like just sneak across the top hallway and try to get a sneak peek at what Santa left. And then we go around teasing and get depressed watching Brad Pitt. It's just good times.
Yeah, what a great holiday film, Legends of the Fall.
I can never think of it. And I'll tell people, I was like, yeah, I'm going to watch Legends of the Fall. They're like, for Christmas? Yep.
Yes.
It's happening. And of course, Elf 10,000 times. I mean, that never gets old.
Never. In fact, there's also a great, like if people are watching that, I love this show on Netflix that's the movies that made us. Mm-hmm. Yes. Did you watch the one about Elf?
I did. I haven't finished it. I'm like halfway through, but it's mind-blowing. So good.
It's really good. Like I've watched most of the episodes and I really liked the Elf one. I've seen it a couple times at this point, and it really is an interesting story, like especially if you're interested in like filmmaking, just because like everybody who was involved on that project were like nobodies at the time. So the fact that they let them make this like multi-million-dollar movie, like
Christmas
with Will
movie.
Ferrell as an elf,
yes.
Like, I'm glad it happened because now we get to enjoy it every Christmas along with Legends of the Fall.
Legends of the Fall. Yeah, I feel like Elf kind of knocked like I remember when the Santa Claus came out, that was a big one, and that made the holiday staple rounds. And then Miracle on 34th Street, like the remake and the OG, like Beautiful Life, whatever. But I feel like Elf just kind of came in and knocked everyone off the table because it's just good family fun, and it keeps the kids' attention.
It's good for everyone.
Yeah. Do you watch any of the Hallmark movies and stuff? Are you a Hallmark movie person?
Of course I do.
Okay, I figured.
I'm not okay. I love a good Hallmark movie. I love a Lifetime Christmas movie because let's face it, there's a lot more diversity in something that's not on Hallmark.
True that.
I like that it's expanding to like Netflix and Hulu and all these different networks at this point. I will say the one thing that just always holds me back from Hallmark is like I just don't love that they're not really making that much progress in like the content that they're creating. Although we're seeing a gradual change, it's just a very slow change. So
yes, snail's pace.
But I know that you're somebody who's also appeared in
I have
a holiday movie.
And it aired again. My friend in New York texted me and guess what I'm watching this morning? I was like, it's been 7 years and they play it every year on Christmas and somehow I don't get a check and it's
Tell
so sad.
everybody about this
if you're looking...
it's not every day that you meet somebody who's been in a TV Christmas movie.
It's hilarious because it wasn't originally a Hallmark movie. It started off on Ion. And then it hopped over to Hallmark, and then I think 1 year it popped over onto Lifetime. So it's been in circulation, and it does have all the good, sweet family cheese, very kid friendly, very wacky and sweet. And it's A Christmas Wedding Date starring Marla Sokoloff and Chris Carmack.
Yes.
And as seen on Nashville and Grey's Anatomy, whatever else his beautiful face is doing. But it's like a Groundhog Day, but for Christmas and with a little bit of peppered romance. And it's a really cute movie. I love it. It's adorable. I'm really proud and happy that I got to have that on the career list. Like I never really understood the amount of Hallmark Christmas movies that get pumped out over time and how people will sit and watch 6 to 12 in a row, and I'm and the plots are not that different, very similar. There's a lot of TikToks about it, mocking it and being like, oh, every Hallmark Christmas movie. But I guess it's just that security blanket that's comfortable and routine, and some people really, really love that, and that comfort around the holidays and seeing the same things cross your path. It just gives you that really nice, grounded, comfy, cozy home feeling. So it's like, okay, if I can be part of that, I'm down. I'm not winning no Oscars, but
I get why a lot of people who like maybe read romance also enjoy watching Hallmark. Hallmark specifically, but just Christmas movies in general. But the thing about Hallmark is that it's very much like a machine. Like these are it is a very similar structure for every movie. Take it from somebody who's done some writing development with Hallmark before. Like I've been shown what the formula format is to create a Hallmark movie, and they don't want to stray that far from the formula, which on the one hand I get because romance itself yeah, exactly. And romance itself is very formulaic in that you have this expectation that, well, no matter what happens, like this couple's going to end up together at the end of this story. So I don't really have to worry. Like when I go into reading it or watching it, like I can kind of keep one eye on the TV and one eye on baking cookies because I don't need to put too much thought into it. And that's fine. But also because it sticks to this one formula, there's not a lot of change, which I think is also problematic. And we've had conversations about that in like the romance genre in general. So thankfully we are seeing, I think, more changes and a little bit more progression in romance novels. So hopefully that'll translate to the screen as well someday in the near future.
Right? Do you feel, in terms of diversity in Hallmark movies, do you feel like it's moving at the same progressive pace that, say, because you've been reading romance novels way longer than I have, so I'm sure you've seen the progression over time and how they've diversified and tried to tell other stories with, people of color as the protagonists and everything like that.
Right.
Do you feel like like romance and the Hallmark
No.
Christmas movies are moving at the same pace? Who is progressing faster?
Romance novels,
Romance
like
novels, yeah.
by a landslide. Like, and I mean, I don't think romance novels are necessarily where they should be at this point in terms of like diverse representation. However, I think a lot of the people who do write romance and who read romance are very progressive in the way that they think, because we're seeing that reflected in the books. I think the problem is that publishing is still catching up to those writers, and those readers who have this demand for diverse representation in their books. And it's not that the books aren't being written, it's that they're not necessarily being widely published and publicized.
Right.
And so we're just now in the last couple years, especially in light of political, changes, seeing those changes made in our media. And they're happening a lot quicker in books than they are in, I don't want to say in all movies, because I do think in the last couple of years, there's definitely been a push for, more women focused, LGBTQ focused, Black stories focused, than there have been on Hallmark channels.
Yes.
So I think that's also why it's so obvious on Hallmark, is that all these other places, TV networks, movies, books, they're making such blatant choices and changes and decisions that it makes Hallmark especially look like they're being left in the Stone Age, because they're not necessarily keeping up with
Well, maybe
what
that'll
other
force
people
them
are
into
doing.
it. We'll just strong arm them into it. That would be
You would
nice.
think after enough like angry tweets and emails, they're like, oh, maybe we should change things.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's just a firm shaking of their shoulders. Like, wake up.
Exactly. So, I haven't watched a lot of Hallmark movies this season yet, but I do plan on watching some. Yeah. So I guess I'll just kind of like peruse and see like which ones sound like the most fun. And I have to say, it's kind of the perfect segue into today's reading.
Yes.
Because I do think that the book we're talking about today could very easily be made into a TV movie.
I thought I was reading a script for one, in all honesty. I really, really did.
Yeah, it's understandable. So just so everybody knows, today's reading selection is Fool Me Twice at Christmas by, I looked up her name to know how to pronounce it correctly. It is Camilla Isley. That is at least how the audiobook narrator pronounced her name. So we're going to go with that and hope that somebody did their research. But this contemporary exes to lovers romance was published in September of this year, 2021. It's available on Amazon for $2.99 Kindle edition. This is also the first in a series of romantic comedy holiday books that Camilla Isley is writing for 2021. All of them are considered standalone novels. Some of them I think are actually inspired by holiday classic stories. Like I believe the second book she's writing in this little series is based on Scrooge, Christmas Carol, but a modern retelling of A Christmas Carol. So whether or not you decide to start with Fool Me Twice at Christmas, it's up to you. I think you can really go about this series any way you want. Also, if you are in the market for a few more holiday stories, Camilla on her website is offering a free holiday romance audiobook to download. And just by following her YouTube link, I actually found that she has several of her audiobooks completely free on YouTube as well. So if you're looking for maybe an audiobook for your next, road trip or while you're cooking, whatever you're cooking for the holiday season, there you go. So
sweet.
Yeah, lots of stories in store for you if you want to check out more of Camilla Isley. Fool Me Twice at Christmas, as we mentioned, is also 100% a closed door romance. So I do just want to put that out there for people. If that is not your jam, that's okay. But we know that happens to be a side effect of holiday stories in general. There happen to be a lot of them that are closed door. That's okay. But it is also very much on the shorter side of romance novels. It only is about 200 pages. So again, it could be a quick read in the tub or plane ride, what have you. Lots of options. So
Plenty.
yeah, let me give everyone the brief, well, not so brief, synopsis from goodreads.com, and then we will dive into our discussion. So we will start here. There are two types of relationships, fake and real. That's good. Point blank.
Only two.
Love it.
Just two.
Just two. Chuck and Kate's used to be real, oh so real, but after she broke his heart 4 months ago, leaving him, it became all just pretense for the sake of their entwined families. I wanted to say like intertwined, but
Right?
I guess entwined is a word too. I don't know.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
With parents who are best friends and business partners, it's not easy for Chuck and Kate to announce they've split up. But with the holidays looming over them, they can no longer keep pretending. Chuck and Kate head home for Christmas, determined to tell the truth, and end up accidentally engaged instead. As you do.
As you do.
The more they try to pull apart, the more the universe seems to push them back together, shortening the road to the altar. And when just for show kisses stir up forgotten feelings, things get even more complicated. Now, with the midnight hour approaching, will Chuck and Kate's relationship turn out to be real or fake? Ooh, I see what they did there. They took it back to the beginning of the synopsis.
That was a full circle moment, as they say.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you. Overall impressions. What do we think?
Girl. All right. So this may just be my stereotypical haven't read a lot of romance novels ass talking here, but when I think of romance novel, I think, yes, fantasy, yes, romance, yes, I'm tingling reading it, and then dirty time. Like it'll eventually come, whether it's classy dirty time or, there's going to be sexy time at some point. So when I cracked it open and I started reading the first couple pages, and I know it's a holiday book, but when they cracked it open and it opens with the two of them in the car driving to Blue Water Springs, I was like, oh no, we're going straight Disney right now. This is going to be like wrapped in a pretty bow. We ain't going to get dirty. But we don't know. Let's see where this takes us. And as I was reading, I really liked how some of the chapters were split up in his point of view and her point of view.
Yes. Dual POV.
Yes. I dug that. I thought that was really fun.
Cool.
That I loved throughout. It gave me kind of, when I was imagining it in my head, like Family Stone vibes.
Okay.
Like that holiday warm, funny, quirky household with funny, quirky characters that aren't too over the top and it's more real.
Do you know what it made me think of was, do you remember that TV Christmas movie with Melissa Joan Hart and Mario Lopez called
I saw the posters, but I didn't watch it.
Holiday in Handcuffs?
Oh, Lord.
That's what it made me kind of think of because, again, that's like a fake boy. It was sort of like Holiday in Handcuffs meets While You Were Sleeping.
Meets The Wedding Date.
Yes, exactly. Like, I love a good fake
Yes.
partner story. Like, that's one of my favorite tropes in romance. So I kept pulling like little things from different books and movies that I had read before and thinking about that.
Yes. So in the first couple chapters, I was a little nervous because A, are we going to get sexy? B, this might be too Hallmarky. And C, I felt like they were setting up the entire plot in the first chunk of the book. Like she reveals right away that she's in a relationship and she really loves so-and-so. But oh my gosh, I wonder if he even still has feelings for me, my ex-boyfriend. I was like, okay, you're basically just fishing, being like, she's wondering, they might get back together. So I was kind of bummed that they were like leading us too soon. But then they redeemed themselves. She redeemed herself by making the rapport. I loved the dialogue between the two of them, her and her ex. I thought it was really quirky and cute. I love how he's like a nerdy, gangly guy, but he's so stinking charming. Like they described him so well that I was like, oh, okay, I'm on board with these people. And they're, yes, they're happy and cheesy Hallmarky, but they almost comment on themselves. Like, we know this is cheese and our parents work in a chocolate factory. Like, I felt like I was a part of the joke,
Oh, I totally agree. I don't think like, this is very much too, like, I know there's been a lot of talk the last few years of like when somebody labels something a rom-com and then you're like, well, this isn't really that funny. Like, this to me is like the definition of a rom-com. Like, there's just outrageous situational comedy, which to me is like the funniest comedy. If like we're not trying to say funny things. We're not trying to be funny. We're just putting our characters in like these ridiculous and outrageous situations that because of that and the way they respond is what makes it funny.
Exactly.
So it was like reading a farce play. Like, I could definitely picture this not only as like a TV movie, I could see this on stage. Like 100%. I could see this as the small community theater production, and because it's just one thing after another. Like, it's one thing to not tell your parents that you've broken up with basically your childhood friend turned sweetheart, and your families are blended not only in relationships but also in business. But then it's another thing to like show up and then like, oops, now we have to pretend to be engaged. Oops. Now we have a fictional baby. Yes. Oops. Now we're going to get married on New Year's in a week. Like, and then they buy them a house, and it just kept escalating. And I will give Camilla Isley like mad credit because they get fake engaged and have this like fake pregnancy in like the first third of the book, and I'm like, how can it get worse? Like, how can we elevate this?
That's true.
From
she
here, and
succeeded.
She did not fail.
No, she succeeded in upping the ante, but also making it kind of believable. Like, it wasn't so far-fetched that you're like, well, I would never do that. But then you're also like, oh gosh, if it was my grandma and she was really old and her eyes lit up when she's like, oh, you guys are going to have a baby.
Families work together, and like this new product that they're planning on launching is like so dependent on our image as like a perfect couple. I mean, honestly, yes, it's so ridiculous, but when you really boil it down to like these very specific circumstances, it actually all makes sense.
Like, this could actually happen. It's not so wacky that it couldn't. Like, if I was in the situation, I'd probably be the same. And I really enjoyed their reactions towards each other in those little moments where they're like, oh, they're having a baby. And then her and Chuck look at each other like, oh shit. Like, I felt like I was in the room watching their awkward faces being like, seriously, is this happening? So she encompassed that so well.
They would trade off like making mistakes too. Like, he would be the one who's like meeting up with buddies at the bar and like would tell them, oh yeah, we're getting married. And she's like, are you kidding me? Now the whole town knows we're getting married. But then she would be the one to be like, I couldn't tell them we weren't having a baby. So now we just have to go with us having a baby.
Yes. And I kind of knew that, that he was, she sold it early on. I keep on saying they as if she's like in a team of in a writer's room, because it's just so, I just see a TV movie. But she did a very interesting job of painting from the beginning that he kind of never really let go, and he was the wronged one. So he was always like, yeah, there's always a possibility that I'd like to be with her. And it was very obvious that she was like, well, no, but maybe. Like, but he's so nerdy and cute. And she did a really good job of making him so endearing. I mean, she was a great, she wrote, what's her name? Lily? No.
Kate.
She wrote Kate very strong, independent, no bullshit, but she did a great job of making her, not just likable, but kind of justifying her train of thought and logically like trying to handle each situation, but she really can't deny what's happening in front of her. Like, she makes her indecisiveness and boldness very well balanced to make her likable, not too annoying.
Very easily to connect to as well. Like, I will say, I think Kate is, and we talk about this on the podcast all the time, is that we as readers tend to be harder on female characters than we do male characters. And I do think this is the perfect example of where you could read this and find yourself really disliking Kate by some of the choices that she's making and some of the things that she's saying. And they can come across as a little gruff, a little, just But at the same time, I was like, I think this is how I would respond in a lot of the same situations. Like she's talking about how, you know, when they were together, she did I knew exactly what she was talking about, the towel challenge from
Yes.
TikTok, where it's like you drop your towel and you're naked and your boyfriend's playing video games. And she's like, you didn't look at me. You didn't see me. You obviously aren't attracted to me. And meanwhile, Chuck's response is, did I even see you? Like,
Right.
if I had seen you naked, I would have wanted to have sex with you. But
Right.
clearly this means I didn't even see you. Like, you're taking this in a different direction. Like, this could have been a fight that we avoided altogether. Like, if we had, you know, talked about these. I felt like their problems were very modern couple problems. Like, just, like, nothing really was wrong. It's just, like, that they didn't really communicate.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing for a lot of couples.
Totally, completely. And then also, you know, some people internalizing, oh, I'm thinking this and this and this, but never sharing with their partner or expressing. And then,
Right.
you know, you got homeboy sitting over there like, I literally had no idea you felt this way. If you were so
Yeah.
attracted to me and wanted me to have sex with you, I'd throw away this PlayStation right now.
Yeah.
But if you, instead of being pissed off and quiet about it, like you could have just said something. And I thought that
Yeah.
could have gone down a dangerous road of him just looking like the lovable, I've always been romantic, I've always been charming, I've always been whatever.
Right.
You just never, you know. So I think she balanced that really well, because she could have easily made him just the stereotypical Hallmark wrapped in a bow of like the guy always just like, I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for you. Let me arrange this private dinner and let me do all these things to show you how much I love you. And she's like, no, I'm busy. I'm independent. No. Oh, wait, just kidding. I do. I want to be taken care of. Like she could have gone down that road and she didn't, which I really liked.
No, I did too. And because I think they both realized and acknowledged the fact that they had made mistakes. That like, oh, yes, I was wrong to think this way. But then also like, oh, you're right. That is something that I do. Like, I didn't realize that that's something that wasn't working for you, or that we needed to talk about. Like some of their complaints about each other were, you know, had merit. And then other ones were very much more of an internalized issue with themselves that they had to like confront. I kind of wish there was because so much was happening, like adding on to like all the issues. Like I do feel like I could have used maybe a little bit more time in certain moments. Like the ones I can think of off the top of my head are they go to a premarital counseling session with, you know,
Father
the pastor.
Pastor so-and-so.
And I was like, that's kind of the moment where they have like their couples therapy, like heart to heart, and kind of confront some of these issues. And I was like, oh man, I kind of wish there were like a couple more sessions of this, or we spent a little more time there. And then the other one I thought about was where there's a moment where Kate, and I don't know if it's when she's talking to Chuck or if it's when she's fighting with the new boyfriend, Marco, where her grandpa overhears it. And so he then knows the truth about what's going on. And then there's no follow-up on that whatsoever. There's nothing like he becomes a confidant. There's nothing about him maybe helping them out a little bit. Like it's very much just him being like, oh, yeah, that's okay. Whatever. Like, I just was like,
yeah, I want to sit in those moments longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was so fast paced and not in a bad way, but you know, the second you'd settle into a feeling, you'd be like, oh my gosh, they're reconnecting. Like mom would barge in. It's like, damn it.
Right.
If we had 2 seconds longer of this really great conversation between the two of them, I feel like I'd be even more invested. You know, not to say that I wasn't.
Those families were there like on their asses like 24/7. Like I just was like, oh my God, like y'all need to sit down.
Calm. Like who and how is that even possible? I mean, I guess if you are the owner of like a massive chocolate company, you have probably millions upon millions of dollars. How do you throw together a wedding, get a wedding dress reconstructed and tailored, and buy a house and do all these things for your kids in like a matter of like days? Like, I'm like, okay, you just have like fuck it money. You just have just like whatever, and you're expanding their business in Japan and like.
And the UK. And I mean, this all
They must be the
begins
equivalent
with,
of Hershey's or C's.
exactly.
Or that's
I
what
was
they're
thinking,
implying.
I was thinking Rocky Mountain Chocolate Company, but clearly I was not thinking big enough.
Toblerone.
Oh gosh, but no, you're right. I think Hershey's is like the perfect way to think about it. Is like it started in like a small town, like, you know, Hershey, Pennsylvania, and then has expanded. And in this case, we're in Michigan, which I was like, okay, I know exactly where they are because I've been to this part of Michigan, so I can see it. You know what was interesting too is I kind of found myself feeling sorry for her douchebag boyfriend Marco.
I did too, near the end. Because there's this one moment where he spelled it all out. He was like, sit in my shoes for a second. You lie to me for several weeks saying that you're over your boyfriend and you're here as friends. You also forced me to play along with this bullshit charade of you being pregnant, having a love child, and you're getting married in 3 days. You have no plan on telling them or dropping the bomb. And you want me to sleep in a separate cabin and pretend?
In
and
the barn.
Meanwhile, my family
it's not
hates
even
me.
a cabin. She wants him to sleep in the fucking barn.
That's right, in the
just
barn.
like-
But hey, they have fucking money. It might be a really nice barn with like a pool table
It's
and a mini
true.
fridge and stuff. But
it's true.
But yeah, I found myself, because in the beginning they set it up pretty much from the jump, like, you're gonna hate this man.
Yeah.
We want you to hate Marco. He's a fitness junkie.
I didn't.
But I was like, and like, he's not horrible. And then by the end, I was like, oh, I really feel for him.
He definitely has like the fitness junkie thing. Like, I'm like, okay, he runs a lot. He's like a little shamey for the fact that like she's not as into running and like doing marathons and shit with him. And it's like, that's fine. But I feel like that wasn't leaned into hard enough for us to be like, Marco is the bad boyfriend. Like, we need them to not be together, because I feel like usually it's one of two things in a romance when there's like a love triangle involved, and love triangles are one of my least favorite things in a romance. And one is that either the third person is like a complete garbage human being, where you're just like, okay, great. We know that she's not going to be with him because he's terrible. He treats her awful,
but
know,
the
whatever.
flirtation's still fun, even though she's going to end up with Mr. Right.
Exactly. We're like, oh, they're not meant to be. It's fine. Or they're like a super sweet, perfect human being. I'm kind of thinking like Patrick Dempsey's character in Sweet Home Alabama, where I'm like, she could have ended up with him and it would have been perfectly fine. But he also is like a good enough person to be like, oh, you know what? Maybe, you know, as great as we are, maybe we're just not like the right ones for each other. Like, we can have other people. Like, that's fine. This was kind of like wishy-washy in between for me when it came to Marco. Like, I almost could have had the story without Marco and maybe even preferred that, because it just kind of, I think if you had removed Marco from the equation, it could have still been just like, we have to tell our families that we're not together anymore, like, so that we can go about our lives. And I think he was just an added layer that I didn't need. And it was
fine. So
until
I got the payoff of, oh shit, Marco's here. Like, your friend is at the door. I was like, oh damn. So like, I liked the drama aspect of it, but I feel like
that too.
It would have been more rewarding if I hated Marco more, or if he was, you know, if he had something about him that like was like, this guy's bad news, cool. But because he's like kind of just an annoying side person that you don't really invest that much time in anyway,
you're like, I don't really care. Like, so yeah, he was kind of like hit or miss for me. I'm with you though. I did like the added tension of like, oh, now we have this other person here that like has to be part of the ruse.
Right. And I think it helped her character too, and how Chuck would kind of look at her and be like, wow, look at how she is with him. Do you go running with him every morning? Are you this person now? So I think Marco was a good tool to use in the development of the story. I just wish he would have had him. I wish we could have hated him more, because it would have made it a little more, because at the end I was like, oh man, this dude really got the shit end of the stick. Like, yeah, he's kind of annoying and like not the best,
but he's also just not a bad guy.
But he's not a bad guy.
He just clearly needs somebody who's like super into fitness to like be with him, and like they'll be fine. Right.
Or if like we found out that he had been cheating on her this whole time, or you know, if there was something about him that made it's like, okay, I'm not completely sad that this guy's gone, and I wasn't going to be anyway, but yeah, it would have been.
I would have liked for there to have been, maybe it's because I would have also wanted there to be kind of like the Marco equivalent for Chuck. Like, not even necessarily like that he's with a new person, but like there's when we first get to the town, Kate makes it clear from like one of the baristas she's talking to that like everybody thinks Chuck is like a hot commodity in town. Like, ooh, any girl in this, tiny ass town in Michigan would be like thrilled to be with this guy. And so I was like, oh, maybe he needs to like have a little flirtation with somebody in town. And then it's like Kate can see like, oh, he's desired by like other women. He can see, oh, she's desired by other men. You know, I feel like I would have liked maybe something else for Chuck, because I feel like he didn't have as much happening for him as Kate did.
Yeah, I could see that, definitely. And I think it wouldn't have hurt the story either if Marco or a significant other for Chuck was more like a James Marston Notebook situation, where it's like, this person's great on paper. They're a great partner. They're a great whatever. But something about Chuck or something about Kate makes it like, wow, you could be like the best person on paper, but still I always come back to Chuck because of this.
Right.
Or that would have been a nice moment to have too. But again, I also didn't feel like it was severely lacking. And
No.
I was perfectly satisfied with just this wacky, like, what else could go wrong? Oh, here it is. Like, it's like, this is hilarious. Like, I could literally watch this episode on any sitcom, anywhere.
Oh, I totally would. And I will tell you, my favorite thing that Camilla chose to do in this story was to not have them get married at the end.
Yes.
Like, I would have been screaming if they have this whole, fake wedding plan leading up to this wedding, and they're walking down the aisle and they're there ready to get married, and they say, oh, we're not getting married, only to then come back and actually get married. That would have been too much for me.
Yes.
I would not have been okay with that. Like, and I'm sure some people might read this book and think that that's where it's going to lead to. Like, by the time they get to the wedding, they'll be in love again. So the wedding will be real.
We'll just go through with it. It'll be fine. And even I liked right before, the night before, when he was hungover and he agreed on the phone, he was like, all right, I just won't show up. I'll be the asshole. Yeah. I'll leave you at the altar and we'll solve this whole thing.
Right.
And even that was a fun, like, oh, good. Here we are. Just kidding. He's here. What are you doing here? And that
what are we
look
doing
between
now?
the two of them, like, what are you doing? Are you literally going to marry me right now? Is this happening?
Yeah.
And like you said, I was like, oh, please don't just get married right now and be like,
I'm
you know
so glad
what?
they didn't.
Fine. So that was really great. And I thought that made Chuck even more endearing to call Marco at the end.
Yes. And be like, I didn't marry her. It's fine. That's what they come here for. But and so one of my favorite moments is that not only when Chuck tells everybody like, well, this is kind of like what's been going on, like we're not really together. I love that he tells her, I would love to marry you. Like, I would be thrilled to marry you. However, this is not the way that I marry you. And I was like, oh my gosh, melt my frozen heart there.
So nice. And that's where the payoff came from. I was like, like if we just had a couple more moments of that, like selflessness, a couple little more moments of finding each other again. Like, I wanted a couple more. Like, they were in there and they were satisfying, but I just wanted just a couple more of those.
I also the one thing I felt that was missing was I would have liked maybe a little more at the end. I would have liked, because they run off and they have their cute, like, The Graduate, like, getaway moment on a bus with like her in her wedding dress.
I wanted to ask you though, how did you feel? Okay, so there's a scene on a bus. They jump, they're getting away from the wedding and they're having their runaway bride moment together, and they're trying to lose the family chasing them afterwards, and they hop on a bus and
full of
Girl Scouts. And I'm like, okay, like, this is kind of funny. At first glance, I was like, ha, this is funny. But then he's like, what happened between the two of you? And Chuck ends up giving this really sweet story about, this is the story of us. Part of me liked it. Part of me didn't. How
I did too.
I feel about that scene.
I'm mixed on it as well, because I will say one of my biggest pet peeves when reading a story is having to rehear things that we've already seen. So when he's like telling them about, and we were pretending to be together, but we had broken up. I'm like, We've been here.
Yes.
Like, we do not need to see this again. What I wanted to see more of in his story was, and they do touch on it a little bit, is what we hadn't known. Like, when they first, I think one of the little girls asks them, like, well, but how does it all begin? Like, every story starts with once upon a time. And so when he starts talking about when they were kids and like, oh, this is where it began, and then this one time we kissed, and then we were together, I was like, this is good. This is like what I wanted, was if you're going to tell this story about you guys and not what we've seen and how it ends, or like to be continued, I want to know how it began, because that they're talking about how they were together for like a decade and they were friends and they grew up together in the chocolate factory. And that's a great story.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted more of that.
Completely. So yeah, I was kind of thrown by that. I was like, oh, this is cute and quirky, bringing the kids into it to help them realize the innocence of how simple it is. I was like, I get it.
Yeah.
But it was a little long
too
for
long.
me. Yeah, it was just long. And I was like, and so then after they end it and they have that great moment where he calls Marco and he's like, listen, bro, if you want to be with her, you should be with her.
She's free.
The whole charade is over. So that's something that you have to that we can put aside. So all of that, cool. And then her catching up to him and being like, it's you, da 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 da. All great. But even then, I turned the page and it was over. And I was like,
it ended.
Wait,
that was my issue.
What? And there was this great moment of, and it's part of my excerpt that I'm going to read, but it's this moment where finally they like they have a little intimate moment, and she's like, you know what? I want him right now. Oh my gosh, we're ripping off a Christmas sweater. I was like, here we go. And then Mom popped in, and I was like, oh, son of a, okay, don't worry. Kristen, chill out. You'll probably get this like on their honeymoon, or surprise, we ended up in Maui, or like calm down. We'll get it. We'll get that scene. So when I turned the page after like, okay, Marco's gone. I love you. The end. I was like, what? You finally got me on board liking these two people. I bought the love story. I understand. I am so on board. I even like the family. I want to see the moment where they meet up with the family. They're like, hey guys, you still love us? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. Cool. This is the wedding that I want. And then you skip to that. The honeymoon that I want. And then they finally get to connect. Like, you built up this sexual tension, and I finally got into it. And then tune in next week. I'm like, what?
I did not have as high expectations as you did as far as like the boning content went, just because it was just like when we were halfway through and I'm like, okay, the like most sultry thing that's happened so far is like
they're each other's hand.
Yeah, like they're posing for this like social media campaign together, and he kisses her neck, and I'm like, ooh, that is spicy. Like, I love a good neck kiss. But also, I think this is about as far as it's gonna go.
Man, I'm a bummer, and you have more experience than I do, so I was just going in blind, like, all right, cool. Like, I went from reading Twilight and like fucking like Choose Your Own Adventure sexy time books, so I have no monitor of like the pace or, ooh, are we gonna get sexy time? Are we not? Like, I was still holding out, like maybe it'll happen. And then,
that's good. No. You had hope.
I had so much hope.
I respect that. I am a lot more, disillusioned. So it's. But I will say, though, I'm with you. The one thing that was missing for me at the end was that final moment where it's like the families get back together and they sit down. And I know at that point we're past Christmas, we're at New Year's, but it's like I wanted that like final moment where they are together with the families, being completely honest, like, here we are, you got what you wanted, like, we're together again, kind of thing.
That moment with Grandpa of like,
yes,
see, I knew this was going to happen. Like, yeah.
I wanted one more thing. And on the one hand, I love that they kind of are like, deal with it, family. Is like, this is not, you're always putting all this pressure on us and everything. But there are some stories that you can read where like, if there's no resolution between families, that's fine, because sometimes they need to have their space, and maybe it's like more of a toxic relationship. But this is not one of those stories.
No.
Like, these families, as much as they want, the couple to be together, and obviously they maybe make choices that are kind of like pushing that forward, they're very much good-hearted, loving people. And so you want everybody to like get along and be together and celebrate and have like family dinner together.
Yeah,
Like
because it wasn't just a will they, won't they. It was more of like a also, the family being like,
right.
are we going to get our dream or not? So it's like the family doesn't get a resolution. Like they've been a part of it this whole time. We've been on this journey with them and they don't.
It's just as much like a story that's like the family, like the family's love story, like everybody together. So yeah, that was the one thing that definitely did feel a little off to me, was considering how much time we spend in the company of these families that we don't actually end with the family.
Yeah.
So
it's like you made me love the cast, and then I didn't even get to see them for the curtain call. I'm mad. You made me like them. And I don't get to see Auntie do her thing. Like, I was like, oh, man.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I just needed one more chapter. I needed one more chapter of like everyone passing food around the table and everything.
I just wanted that.
Well, this is about that time where I would want to share a few, steamy excerpts, but joke's on us. We have none.
So I can read this that I pulled from the book only to further, magnify the statement how there is no sex. So yes, this is a piece of the text by Kate. She says, "He's startled at first, but soon hugs me in return, his hands gently caressing my back. Alarmingly fast, the scene turns into a replica of Dawson's Creek, the most cathartic episode, season 6, episode 2. Dawson and Joey have a friendly hug in their dorm bedroom, and before long, they're making love for the first time. I bury my face in the nook of Chuck's collarbone and lose myself in the moment. And then Mom came in." I was so mad. I was like, okay, you're being cute and referencing Dawson's Creek. How cute.
Yes. I was going to say that scene. I was like, oh my God. I love that you said what season it was. I love that you knew what episode it was. Like, I loved how specific this Dawson. I don't know if I've read a more specific Dawson's Creek reference in any piece of literature. So I very much appreciated that.
No, I thought that was a little bit hilarious.
Yeah.
But there were a couple, like when they took a photo together, and that was kind of nice. It's like what a lot of people don't understand is like, a lot of the sexiest things are the most subtle things.
That's true.
Like when he leads you into a room by the small of your back.
Oh my gosh, the small of the back. Yes. No, and the neck caress when he's like caressing her neck and she's like, oh my God, like if I didn't have a boyfriend right now, I would like demand we like go to my room after this.
Right? Like when she nestles in his neck nook, that's my favorite spot. Like there are little things like I could sit all day watching Prince Harry push Meghan's hair back or fix her ponytail, and I'm like, yes.
Or what was that? Wasn't there like a recent? It was like a video from the red carpet of.
Oh, I know exactly what
Jessica Chastain, and is it Oscar Isaac that she's with?
Oscar Isaac.
Oh my God. And it was just this moment where like he like turns to look at her and like I think he's like kind of stroking her arm, which is like on his shoulder, and you're just like, oh my God, if that is not the most sexual look a man has ever given a woman, I don't know what is.
So simple. I can read an entire book with like a couple of those peppered in. Like if she would have given me a little more of those, I would have been like, all right, that's enough. I don't need the big payoff because I am so on board with the will they, won't they. Yay. Like I would have loved a little more of that. Or that one other red carpet moment where with the Sound of Metal guy, where he like took his wife's hair and like like the photographers were like, over here. And he like walked over. He's like, hang on, guys. And he like fixed her hair for her. I was like, oh, sploosh, done. The end. Fabulous.
No, I'm with you.
It's like, it's that simple. I want to scream that to men. I'm like, it's a lot easier.
It's a lot easier. The bar is so low.
So low.
Oh God. No, but I'm with you. I like when we do we'll segue into our ratings here in a second, but when we do our ratings, you know, just in keeping with like consistency, the way that I always think about my Heat rating is that if there's sex on the page, it's at least a 5 out of 10. And I know that that's not how everybody's system works for them. However, I will say with like the amount of romance I've read where there's been closed door, however, there are still some sexy moments like caressing and hair touching and hand at the, back. Like, I'm like, well, those aren't a zero. Like, those are absolutely like
True.
sexy moments. Like, yes, it's not on the page sex scenes. However, I still have to acknowledge them. So, well,
Yes.
with that, let's segue into our ratings. And I can't remember what the rating system was the last time you were on the podcast, but it's probably changed since then. So,
Yes, it's
we
been a
will
while.
we will be scoring for heart, humor, and heat on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that they could possibly be. And because it's the holidays, we've added a fourth ranking, and that is for holidays. So
Nice.
the
Okay.
holiday
Okay.
quota of the book. But let's start with heart, 1 to 10. What do you think?
Heart, 1 to 10. I'm going to go with a 7.5.
Okay.
Are there halves?
Oh, there can be as many points as you want in between.
7.5559, 6.2.2. Yes, I'd say
Yeah.
7.5. I feel like there was a lot of heart, and I
Mhm.
did truly end up caring about all of the people up in here.
Yeah, and
The only
be
reason why I wouldn't give it an 8 or a 9 or a 10 was just because I just selfishly I wanted more. I think
No, I'm with
if it
you.
was yeah.
Especially at the end, I wanted a little more resolution, like, with the full family. Like, I wanted that final everybody's
Mhm.
together and happy kind of moment, that, not every book needs, but I do think that it would have worked well for this book in particular. So, I'm with you. I gave it a 7, because I do think there's a lot of heart, especially that the family adds to it, but
Mhm.
there were just a couple places where I think we could have leaned a little bit more into the heart moments. So,
Definitely.
yeah, that's okay. How about the humor? She labels this as a rom-com. What do you think?
I'd give it an 8. I'd give it an 8. I think there were very obvious rom-com moments. I felt like I was watching a rom-com in my mind.
Yeah.
It was fun, it was playful, uh-oh, here we go again. Like it played on that, but it wasn't too in your face and cheesy. It felt real, it felt
Yeah.
nice. And again, the only reason why I wouldn't give it a 9 or a 10 is cuz I wanted some more. I
Yeah.
wanted more of it.
I think that's perfectly fair. I gave it an 8 as well. I do think if you're going to label your book as a rom-com, there better be moments to laugh. And there were
Mhm.
definitely multiple moments where while reading, I was like, ah!
Oh no. Oh no. Yes. There was plenty of those.
Yeah. So if you can make me like guffaw out loud, then yeah, I'm gonna give you a higher humor rating. So mission accomplished on this one. How
Definitely
about
rom and com.
heat?
Oh.
Now you don't have to stick with my personal scale. Let it be your own subjective scoring on this one.
Yeah, I think it was pretty accurate. I'd say a 2. Oh, it hurts. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just wanted more. I just wanted more.
Yeah. Okay. So if 5 is sex on the page, it's obviously got to be between like a 1 and a 5. We don't even have like fade to black sex off the page. So it's
No.
definitely got to be on the lower. Yeah, honestly, it might be a 2. It might be
Mhm.
like a 2 for me as well. Like, and the only thing that's making it a 2 is the fact that we have a couple of steamy kisses and like a little bit of like neck caressing. Like beyond that, because
Yeah.
I do remember reading a 12 Days of Boobs Miss pick a few years ago where there wasn't even a kiss. Like there was no sort of like physical embrace that it just I was like, "Ooh, I don't even know how to score this one." So it's definitely got more than that, but
It does.
not a lot more.
I thought that maybe she would kind of dip into the fantasy, like, imagining, like, "Oh my gosh, what I wanna do to him right now." Like, even that would have been great, like, or
That would have
him,
been
like,
nice.
"Oh gosh, if I could just, rip through that, pajama set," like, what
Yeah, or
whatever.
remembering, like, memories of, like, when they
Yeah.
did have sex together.
Yeah, and it's not to say you have to be, like, incredibly dirty or incredibly into it,
No.
but some nice little healthy, like, fantasies of, like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I'd love to hold him right now." Like, if there was a little bit more of that, like, she could have played that
Like,
up a
you're
little bit.
sharing a bed together, and you're telling me they're going to wake up cuddling and there's not going to be a mention of like his morning wood. I'm
His
just like,
morning wood.
that's a missed opportunity right there.
Nostalgia about their morning sex with waffles.
Yes.
Like
She can
anything.
acknowledge his size. I'm just like, okay, it's right
Feel
there.
his heart falling asleep, listening to the sound of his heartbeat. Like there's places we can go, and we're not going. We're just waking up. Mom's here. It's like, oh, come on. It's like the best like boner killer. Like is this family? The best buzzkill. Cock block. They are the queen and kings of cock blocking.
They might as well call themselves the cock blockers, like as opposed to whatever their family's name is.
Yes.
There you go. That's almost as, I mean, really, because the other thing I will say that really annoyed me was the fact that they want to name this new chocolate the Chuck-O-Kate. And I was just like, that's the couple name that we came up with for this chocolate is the Chuck-O-Kate.
Chuck-O-Kate.
No. Doesn't sound good. Doesn't sound romantic. I feel like there's gotta be a better like, you know, shipper name than Chuck-O-Kate for Chuck and Kate. Wouldn't it just be Chuck-8 or
Chuck-8?
K-Tuck?
K-Tuck. Well, it's like you don't even have to make it their names. Just name that edition like the, you know, Childhood Forever edition of chocolates.
Yes.
Or, you know, lack of intimacy chocolates. Just anything would have been better than Chuck-O-Kate.
Chuck-O-Kate.
No.
It doesn't have the same ring that like Brangelina does.
Right. I'm like, this is not, one of these things is not like the other.
No. Okay, and then our final ranking, which might be a little bit higher than, you know, the last couple ones, and that is Holiday.
I'd give that sucker a 9.
Yeah.
Because it gave me, not to say that it was overly Christmassy, because there weren't a lot of like Christmas tropes thrown in, but it gave me a very heavy, I think because the family is such a big dynamic of the story, and they made me love the at home for the holidays feeling. I felt like that kind of encompassed, and the fact that they work in a chocolate factory and hot cocoa in winter and, you know, being in a Christmas town. Like they didn't beat us over the head with Christmas, but it felt like Christmas.
There was a lot of Christmas and we do go beyond Christmas. I know we've read a few books for Boobsmas this year that are kind of like leading up to Christmas. We've read a few that take place specifically at Christmas. Like there's definitely like a wide range. And this one I like because it's kind of like that week that's like, you know, Christmas Eve to New Year's Eve and
all the events.
And there's a lot, like without being too cliched of like, oh, we're building snowmen. Although there is like a thing with building snow creations, and then we're decorating gingerbread houses and we're going caroling. Like,
right.
It wasn't too stereotypical as far as like the holiday events go. I liked that they tied the business into a lot of things. Like because we have a chocolate company, we wear a lot of like, you know, swag and like jammies with like snowmen and chocolate on them. And we get hot chocolate from the cafe. So I did like that.
Right.
The business always was kind of like present, which I think was cool. So yeah, I don't think it's a full 10 for me, but I do think it's definitely at least a 9, maybe a 9.5, like as far as holiday ranking goes. So it's definitely a lot of the like winter vibes too, like because they're in Michigan and it's snowing. So maybe if you don't want something that's too holiday centric, but it's still got a lot of winter vibes, this might be a book that you might enjoy.
It's a nice, quick, cozy read. It really is. And it's fun and lighthearted and not too heavy and simple and just and fun. I definitely laughed audibly a couple times and wanted to know. They roped me in quick.
Same.
It was really fun.
It was a very easy read, and I wanted to keep reading. Like I wanted to see how it all turned out. So mission accomplished as far as that goes.
Yes, well done, ma'am.
Do you think you will go on to read perhaps some more Camilla Isley or more in this like holiday centric series that she's creating?
Yeah, holidays has never been a big pull for me.
Okay.
But her style of writing, I really did engage with and liked. So I think I would if I was in the right, you know, mood for it.
Or maybe one of her non-holiday stories. She's got other ones that aren't.
I loved the way she wrote. It felt very like my train of thought, how I react to things. Like the oh crap moments and how she processes like, oh my gosh, he is really cute. Like all of her inner monologues are very on point and I'm very on board with. And she wrote her main female character, you know, not the stereotypical tropes that you normally see in female protagonists and, you know, the way they process different situations. And I just loved her writing style and it felt very, very nice and light and fun and effortless. So I would be very open to reading more of her stuff. For
Yay,
sure.
I'm glad to hear it. Well, okay, and like I said, she's got a couple free audiobooks if people want to check those out both on YouTube and I think there's one that you can download specifically from her website. So that might be a nice way to check it out. I feel like for me personally, I'm not a big audiobook listener, but when I see that it's a shorter story and the audiobook is only like 5-ish hours, I'm like, ooh, that might actually be the perfect thing, like on my drive home for the holidays to like pop on the car. So I might give that a go. I will report back if I do, but
yes, let me know which one you dive into.
will do. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me yet again for another episode of Boobies and Newbies, another holiday episode at that.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And I love that you're expanding my reading portfolio and I will be back anytime. You throw any book at me and I'll do it.
Next
I
time we'll
love
have to
it.
find you one that's not a holiday book. I feel like your experience with romance is choose your own adventure and holidays.
Holidays. That's literally all I've had.
I'm sure you'll be back on the podcast, hopefully to discuss something other than holiday romance. And, you know, here we are 6 days into our 12 days of Boobsmas. So everybody, I hope you come back tomorrow, the next day, whenever the next episode drops. And we've got 6 more of these bad boys to go before the big man comes to town. So stay tuned for that. Well, I guess there's nothing left for us to do except say, on the 6th day of Boobsmas, my lover gave to me 6 billionaires. Merry Boobsmas, everybody.
On the 6th day of Boobsmas, my lover gave to me 6 billionaires, 5 penis rings, 4 dukes of fucking, 3 butt plugs, 2 nipple clamps, and a hot hookup underneath the tree.
Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Newbies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts.